Hi class, in this video we're going to be talking about ratios. So a ratio compares quantities with the same units. So to give you an example, if I had one quantity measured in centimeters and I compare it to another quantity measured in centimeters, this would be considered to be a ratio because I'm comparing them and they have the same units. Or another example would be if I compared one unit in kilometers to another unit measured in kilometers. Because they have the same unit, they're considered to be a ratio. But if I were to compare a unit measured in kilometers to a unit measured in liters, because they have different units, they would not be considered a ratio and they would actually be called a rate, which we'll talk about later on in the chapter. Now let's answer these 5 questions. What is the ratio of circles to triangles? For this question, whichever shape you see in the sentence that comes first, you write down first. So right now I have one circle. So I write 1. I put a colon, and now I look at triangles. So circles to triangles. So how many triangles do I have? I have 3 triangles. So my ratio is simply 1 to 3. Now for the second question, what is the ratio of triangles to circles? Because triangles came first in the sentence, I simply find out how many triangles I have first, then compare it to how many circles I have. So my ratio for this one would be 3 to 1. Notice how 1 to 3 is different from 3 to 1 because order matters. Because it's 1 to 3 because circles came first, then triangles came next. But for 3 to 1, triangles came first, then circles came next. If I move on to question 3, what is the ratio of circles to shapes? Shapes in general just means the total number of shapes because technically a circle is a shape and so is a triangle. So when I add the total number of circles to the total number of triangles, I get 4. So my ratio of circles to shapes is going to be 1 to 4. And again, I write it as 1 to 4 and not 4 to 1 because circles came first and then shapes came right after in the sentence. So I have to write 1 to 4. Now, number 4 is a 3-term ratio possible with these shapes. So a 3-term ratio is defined as such. It's essentially when I have 3 different entities separated by colons. So this would be considered a 3-term ratio. Okay, I believe I can put these in a 3-term ratio. So if I were to guess, I can probably do this. Circle to triangle to shapes. That way this can fit into a 3-term ratio. So my number of circles is 1, my number of triangles is 3, and my total shapes are 4. So 1 to 3 to 4, that would be considered a 3-term ratio. So as you can see, that means the ratios we had before, the 1 to 3, the 3 to 1, and the 1 to 4, are considered to be 2-term ratios because I only have pretty much 2 terms. But in 3-term ratios, I have 3 different terms or 3 different entities. Now question 5, can ratios be written as fractions, decimals, or percents? And the answer simply is going to be yes. And I'll show you through an example. So a fraction describes the parts of a total. So basically for parts of a total, let's say I want to describe circles to the total number of shapes. I would have 1 over 4, where 1 represents 1 circle and 4 represents 4 shapes. So that's an example of a ratio being written as a fraction. And if I were to express 1 over 4, a fraction to a decimal, this would simply be 0.25 as a decimal. And if I want to express that as a percent, I simply times 0.25 by 100, and that should get me 25%. So once again, that verifies that the answer to question 5 is yes, ratios can be written as fractions, decimals, or percents.